She introduced me as her driver at a party I helped pay for. Said it loud enough that everyone heard. When I pulled her aside afterward, she rolled her eyes and said, "You should be grateful I even let you in." I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, just picked up my jacket and left. 2 weeks later, her parents showed up at my door. Funny how you can spend years with someone and still not really know them at all. Or maybe the signs were always there, and I just didn't want to see them. Either way, what happened last month changed everything. Here's the situation. I, 32M, had been dating Susan, 29F, for about 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a bar trivia night. She was gorgeous, confident, and had this way of making everyone gravitate toward her. I fell hard. Susan works in IT at a tech company downtown. Entry-level support role. Not great pay, but she always talked about it like she was running the place. I work as a general contractor, running my own small business. Not glamorous, but I've built it from nothing into something I'm proud of. It pays the bills, and then some. When we started dating, things were perfect. We'd spend weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, catching indie films at that little theater she loved. But looking back, there were always little signs that something was off. Small comments about my clothes, subtle jokes about my truck, the fact that in 2 years she'd never once introduced me to any of her work friends. I ignored it all because, well, I was in love. About a month ago, Susan mentioned that her company was having this big client appreciation party at some upscale hotel downtown. She was helping organize it, and she seemed really stressed about making sure everything was perfect. Jessica from IT is bringing her boyfriend, she mentioned casually one night while scrolling through her phone. He's a lawyer or something. "Oh, can you bring someone?" I asked, not thinking much of it. "I could come for moral support if you want." She hesitated just for a second, but I caught it. "I mean, I guess you could come. It's just a bunch of corporate people talking about boring work stuff." I offered to help with some of the expenses since I knew she'd been stressed about money lately. Her lease had gone up, and she'd been hinting that she might need to move. I ended up paying for her new dress, $450, the gift basket for her boss, $200, and other party supplies. Not a fortune, but not exactly pocket change either. The night of the party arrived, and I cleaned up nice. Wore my best suit, the one I saved for meeting with potential big clients. Got a fresh haircut. The works. Susan seemed distracted when I picked her up in my truck, barely acknowledging how I looked, just asking if I remembered the gift basket. When we arrived at the hotel, I could feel her tense up beside me. As we walked through the lobby toward the ballroom, she started walking slightly ahead of me, creating distance. "Maybe you should wait in the bar," she suggested suddenly. "I need to check on some things first." "I'll just come with you," I said. "Maybe I can help carry something." She looked annoyed but didn't argue. As we entered the ballroom, I was impressed. Everything looked amazing. Open bar, fancy appetizers circulating, mood lighting. Susan immediately spotted some colleagues and headed over, me trailing behind. "Susan, everything looks amazing," said a woman in a sleek black dress. "Who's this?" There was this pause, just a beat too long. I extended my hand to introduce myself when Susan cut in. "This is Alex, my driver for the evening." The words hung in the air. Her colleague looked confused, glancing at my suit, clearly not buying that I was a driver. "Your driver?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "Yeah," Susan laughed a little too loudly. "He was nice enough to drop me off, but now he's actually heading out." She turned to me. "Right, Alex?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 2 years together, and I was her driver? I gently took her elbow and guided her a few steps away from the group. "What the hell was that about?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level. She rolled her eyes, checking over her shoulder to see if anyone was watching. "Look, these are important people. My career is on the line here. You really should just go wait in the car or something." "I helped pay for this party," I reminded her. "I bought your dress." That's when she said it, looking right at me with this expression of pure contempt. "You should be grateful I even let you in." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. All those little signs, all those comments, they weren't just quirks or bad days. This was who she really was. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. Just nodded, said "you're right," and walked away. I retrieved my jacket from coat check and drove home in silence. By the time I got to my place, my phone had a dozen missed calls and texts from Susan. "Where are you? Are you seriously leaving me stranded? Don't be so dramatic. You're embarrassing me." I didn't respond to any of them. Just turned off my phone and opened a beer. I felt strangely calm, like I'd finally woken up from a long dream. The next morning, Susan was at my door. Her eyes were puffy like she'd been crying, but I noticed her makeup was still perfect. Always camera ready, that was Susan. "What happened last night?" she demanded. "You just left me there. I had to get an Uber home." I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. "You called me your driver. It was just a joke." "God, you're so sensitive. Those people are important to my career. I didn't want them to think I was, dating a contractor?" I finished for her. She had the decency to look slightly ashamed. "That's not what I meant. It's just complicated, office politics and all that." Then came the tears. She was good at that, crying on command. She told me how sorry she was, how she'd been stressed about impressing her boss, how she'd make it up to me. She even suggested a weekend getaway, just the two of us. "I love you," she said, touching my face. "You know that, right? Last night was a mistake. I was being stupid." I let her think I believed her. Invited her in, made her coffee, listened to her explanations and excuses. She left shortly after, seemingly convinced we were okay. A few days later, things seemed to return to normal on the surface. Susan was extra affectionate, constantly texting me heart emojis and talking about our future. Then, about a week after the party incident, she called me sounding excited. "Babe, guess what? My birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking of hosting a dinner for some colleagues at that new fancy place, AmITheA's." "That sounds nice," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a little short on cash this month after that party and everything." "You want me to help pay for it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Would you?" "It would mean so much to me. Just my work friends, a chance to network a bit." I noticed she didn't invite me to attend. "How much are we talking about?" "Probably around $1,200 for the private dining room. They need a card on file." "I can put my card down for you," I said. "Just let me know when you need it." "You're the best," she squealed. "I'll come by tomorrow to get it." The next day, she came over and I handed her my credit card. She took it with a smile, not noticing that it wasn't my usual card. "So what time should I be there?" I asked casually. Her smile faltered slightly. Actually it's just going to be work people. Boring shop talk and all that. You wouldn't enjoy it." "Got it," I said, nodding understandingly. "No problem." "Thanks for understanding," she said, kissing me quickly before leaving. "You're the best." On the day of her dinner, I called my credit card company and reported the card I'd given her as lost. They immediately canceled it and issued a new one. Then I dressed in my nicest suit, even nicer than the one I'd worn to her work party, and headed to AmITheA's. Instead of going inside the main entrance, I took a seat at the bar area that had a good view of the private dining room, but was partially concealed by a decorative divider. They arrived around 7:30. Susan looking stunning in a new dress I hadn't seen before, surrounded by her colleagues. I recognized the woman from the party who'd witnessed her calling me her driver. There was also a guy I didn't recognize who kept putting his hand on the small of Susan's back. She wasn't moving away from his touch. In fact, she seemed to be leaning into it. I ordered a scotch and watched. They were laughing, taking photos, raising glasses in toasts. Susan was in her element, the center of attention. I noticed how different she looked here. Confident, animated, nothing like the often complaining girlfriend who was just an IT support person. At 9:45, right on schedule, the server brought the check to their table. I watched Susan confidently hand over my credit card, a smug smile on her face as she waved away offers from her colleagues to split the bill. "It's my birthday, please. This is my treat," I could imagine her saying. The server left with the card. Minutes ticked by. Then I saw him return, leaning down to speak quietly to Susan. Her face changed, confusion turning to panic. She fumbled with her phone, presumably checking her banking app. Then she started frantically typing, texting me, no doubt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Alex, something's wrong with your card. It's declining. Call me now." I didn't respond. Another text came through. This is serious. I look like an idiot in front of everyone. The bill is over $1,200. Still, I said nothing. Just sipped my scotch and watched the drama unfold. Susan was now visibly flustered, her face flushed as she made excuses to her colleagues. I could see her trying other cards in her wallet. All maxed out, I knew, because she'd complained about her credit card debt just last week. After 5 increasingly desperate texts, I finally replied, "Look behind you." I watched as she read the message, her head snapping up in confusion. Then she turned around, scanning the room until her eyes landed on me at the bar. The color drained from her face. I stood up, paid for my drink, and walked calmly toward their private dining room, pulling an envelope from my jacket pocket as I approached. The sudden silence when I entered was almost comical. Susan's eyes widened in horror. Several people at the table seemed to recognize me, including the woman from the party. "Isn't this your driver?" one of them asked Susan. I smiled pleasantly at the table. "Actually, I was, her boyfriend of 2 years." I pulled several photos from the envelope, pictures of us together at various events, holidays, vacations. I spread them on the table. "I also happen to be the guy who paid for her dress at your client party, the gift basket for her boss, and who got called her driver for my troubles." The awkward silence was deafening. The guy who had been touching Susan's back suddenly shifted away from her. Her boss, a stern-looking woman at the head of the table, was staring at the photos with narrowed eyes. "Alex, can we talk about this outside?" Susan hissed, her face now bright red. "No need," I said pleasantly. "I just came to wish you a happy birthday and let you know that the card was canceled, reported lost yesterday." "You did what?" she shrieked, abandoning any attempt at composure. I stood straight, adjusting my suit jacket. "Oh, and to answer your question from 2 weeks ago, no, I'm not grateful you let me in, but I am grateful for the clarity." I turned to the table. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. The check's all yours, Susan." She jumped up, grabbing my arm. "You can't just leave. At least pay the bill." I looked at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "Fuck off," I said quietly, then turned and walked out. As I left, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Susan yelling my name, people murmuring in confusion, someone suggesting they all split the bill. I didn't look back. The next day, the texts and calls were relentless. Susan alternated between begging forgiveness and threatening to destroy my reputation. I blocked her number. She showed up at my house twice. I didn't answer the door. She left tearful voicemails from her friends' phones. I deleted them without listening. A week later, one of her colleagues actually reached out to me on LinkedIn. Apparently, there had been an HR investigation at work after her boss discovered Susan had been lying about her role and responsibilities, claiming credit for projects she wasn't involved in. The guy who had been touching her at the restaurant, a senior developer she'd been secretly seeing on the side, who immediately distanced himself from her after the dinner incident. 2 weeks after the birthday dinner fiasco, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find an older couple standing there looking uncomfortable. The family resemblance was unmistakable, Susan's parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis," I said, genuinely surprised. I'd only met them once briefly when they were passing through town. "Alex," her father said, looking pained. "May we come in?" I let them in, curious about what brought them to my door. We sat in my living room, the air thick with awkward tension. "We wanted to apologize," her mother finally said. "For Susan's behavior, for everything." Her father nodded. "She's been struggling since that night at the restaurant. Lost her job, had to move back home with us." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and part of me meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want Susan to suffer. I just wanted her out of my life. "No, don't apologize," her mother said firmly. "She did this to herself. We've always known Susan could be materialistic. We probably indulged it too much when she was younger." Her father looked ashamed. "We encouraged her to find someone, financially stable. Told her to use her looks while she had them, but we never thought she'd go this far." That explained some things. I remembered how her father had once joked about Susan landing a big fish when he found out I owned my own business. "She told us what happened," her father continued. "Not at first. She came home with some story about you humiliating her, but eventually, we got the truth out of her." Her mother reached for her purse and pulled out an envelope. "She's too ashamed to come herself, but we wanted you to have this." Inside was a check for $925 and a handwritten note. "For the dress, the gift basket, and everything else, I'm sorry." I stared at the check. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. "We made her take responsibility," her father explained. "Made her sell some of her designer stuff to pay you back. Small step, but it's something." "Thank you," I said, folding the check back into the envelope. "I appreciate you coming." Apparently, she's deleted all her social media accounts, going offline to focus on personal growth or something. As for me, business is good. I've started dating again, cautiously. Had coffee last week with a woman who's a kindergarten teacher. When I told her I was a contractor, she asked thoughtful questions about my work and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. Sometimes I think about that moment in the hotel ballroom when Susan called me her driver. As painful as it was, I'm grateful for it now. Some people show you who they are in big moments. Others reveal themselves in small, casual cruelties. Either way, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I just wish I'd believed it sooner. Update. For those wondering about the credit card situation, no, she couldn't have gotten in trouble for fraud. The card was legitimately given to her by me, and I didn't report it as stolen, just lost. The bank just cancels and reissues in that case. And yes, leaving her with that bill was petty. But after being treated like an ATM with a truck for 2 years, I felt entitled to a little pettiness.